Okay, what we're looking at here is an aerial photograph of the Anfield area, particularly the Rockfield area, and what is kind of growing to be known as the village. And obviously we've got the stadium here, Anfield Stadium, Stanley Park, Goodison Park, the Everton's football stadium, and then the surrounding areas. So this would be kind of Kirkdale, Walton, Anfield, and then back up this way would be Everton. The Anfield project is really a big project trying to pull a number of strands together, that's some existing projects and some new ideas. And what I'm going to do is kind of introduce you to those and kind of how they all link together. I suppose the starting place really for it is around kind of sorting out the housing. Housing in the area is particularly derelict and has been derelict for a number of years, including some streets where the large majority of properties are tinned up, and there are still residents living there, but their neighbours may be 8 or 9 houses away, and that's been a feature of this area for some while. And you can see here this area that's been cleared already, and these new housing, that's been part of an ongoing programme called the Parks Development, and that's kind of ongoing, and it's on its 3rd or 4th phase into that area, and it's kind of been well developed. And so the next stage is to kind of do these areas, but there's no plans for clearance or demolition in this area to do with housing. The housing is going to be refurbished, but there will be some clearance, and I'll get to that in a little moment. Part of the kind of doing up of this area will be kind of knocking very small properties, which are 2 up, 2 downs, into larger properties, so they become 3-bedroom properties by knocking 2 houses into one and creating a much bigger home. But a lot of the places don't really have gardens, and the yards are incredibly small as well. So part of what there is an attempt to do is some places where there'll be a little bit of clearance like here, and that's going to create like a village green, and elsewhere around the neighbourhood there'll be these little things which we're calling pocket gardens. And that's an attempt to kind of redo the area, and as part of that wider regeneration that I've already talked about, there's a brand new top class medical centre just up the road from here. There's a new school which every kid, one parent that we spoke to during the engages told us what a fantastic facility that is. But of course, without doing the houses up would be kind of meaningless without doing up Walton Breck Road, which is where we are currently. And this used to be a kind of former high street, but again it's been a bit run down over the past couple of decades, and there's an attempt to do some renewal work on that. That's an ongoing project. Keep Moat PLC, who have got the Parks project, they've got a regional growth fund grant to do up the high street, and that'll include some new commercial frontages, better shops, better leisure facilities, coffee shops and things like that. And that's all kind of part of the package, and included in there is an attempt to put something called a training hotel for local people wanting to get into the hotel industry. The hotel will be a 100-bed hotel. It's going to be owned by a local charity called Positive Futures, who do outreach work with young children in the area. It's going to be operated by a company that runs the Isla Gladstone and Kemp's Bistro and the Sandon, which is further down on Oakfield Road, and they're going to operate the hotel, and it will be branded as by an international firm, which will give it quality assurance and marketing reach. And obviously that will be situated opposite the COP, and will have massive potential for filling that. Alongside that, there's a plan to have a kind of a public square running up, and there will be some demolitions, clearances of housing some of those streets to make this public square, and there'll be other commercial properties there. Your housing group will put their local office there. The City College wants to put their Centre for Enterprise. There'll be other training facilities and things like that in that area, and part of that is to kind of create something that pulls the high street together as part of that process, but also starts to create a linkage through to Stanley Park. At the moment, if you're on this side of the park. The only access to the park is a very small gateway down by one of these houses, and it's kind of hidden away, the area as its back to the park, so to speak. And one of the attempts is to kind of create this long avenue that kind of a walkway through to the park, all the way through to Priory Road, that'll kind of link up all this activity. And so that will start to have things like a fan park on it for match days. There's been talk of having a creche or a nursery around there, which will kind of be a normal creche during the week, but would be a place where families could leave their children on match days. And obviously that the match day experience is a kind of a big part of this proposal, because Anfield Stadium is right there in the middle of it, and the club has a desire to expand two of its stadiums, one from the main stand, which will happen first, and then the Anfield Road stand, which will happen following the reconstruction of that. But before that can happen, there are some properties under this green area here, which have to be acquired through a legal process to make that a viable proposition, and the negotiations are ongoing on that at the moment. But that would then give us this kind of strip that would start to create a new fan experience, and just like the creche that would be there on both, be available on both match days and non-match days, because there are many more non-match days in the year than there are match days. There'd also be this food hub with an upside down chicken that would be run by another local charity called Can Cook Studios, and they teach healthy food initiatives and living on a budget, those kind of things. And that will be a feature that will be there in the park as a training venue on non-match days, but also during match days. It will act as a place retailing food to the fan going to the match going public. And part of that kind of recreates this whole link around the stadium, because most of the parking is up on these two former sites. One used to be a school and one used to be a sports centre. And so the parking is kind of planned to be there, but will be a bit more, I suppose beautified might be the word, of kind of putting an orchard on there, so it's also productive and kind of tying it into the food production process. And that would also be available for Everton Football Club fans, because they also park over there, and there's a kind of walkway that takes them down. So it won't just suit Anfield Liverpool football fans, it'll also suit Everton football fans. But we can start to see this is starting to bring new activity in the park, and part of that is there's a kind of suggestion that there could be an urban riding stable in the park, and that's been proposed that would use the Olympic legacy that the British Equestrian Society have, and they're committed to spending their legacy money on developing urban riding stables and giving access to people who wouldn't normally give access to horse riding and equestrian stuff. And obviously the park is a great big park, and the cemetery next to it would be great for lots of bridle ways for people to be able to walk around on their horses, and you could go some distance if you took all the paths around there. There's also a plan to put into the park some urban gym equipment, some additional play provision for older kids, a bit more supportive around the fishing, so you can get a fishing permit to fish in the ponds, and that'll be developed a little bit more. And then one of the big things for the park, which obviously links to some of these other activities, is to have a programme of cultural activities, and that's kind of slowly starting. So next week on Thursday, there's the beautiful North Brouhaha Carnival, which will happen. Later in the summer, in September, the Liverpool International Music Festival will be here for a day. There's various bits of it that's kind of starting to take off, and obviously adding more to that programme will be supported if people who are coming to the programme can nip off to the high street for a latte or whatever the Anfield equivalent might be. And of course, just to tie that up, we have been talking about ongoing developments. The park has been done up over the last 5 or 6 years, and the Isle of Gladstone is a an absolute gem of a place, beautiful glass house with a bistro down below where you can already get food and refreshments in the park. And the park has become a lovely place. I first arrived at the park probably about 20 years ago, and it was a bit derelict. And when I came to see the giants, the infamous giants who were based here 2 summers ago, I was astounded by how well the park had been improved, and it's encouraging to see that they want to improve it some more. And as part of the whole ongoing development, over the next few weeks, there'll be a project office sited in the community, and that'll have more of this kind of information, and will, as things are ongoing and are developing, you know, residents and visitors alike will be able to pop into the information office to find out more about what's going on, because at the moment that is just like a collection of ongoing activities and ideas, but over the coming months that's going to really start to expand as the project emerges for real. And that's really it from an official perspective. But what we've been going out is asking people, what do you think? And so mostly, on the whole, people have been telling us these are all kind of positive experience, but other people have been adding stuff. Some people have talked about the park, and they'd really like to use the park, but they're not quite sure how safe it is. And so we've kind of been getting people to help us with little drawings, and that was a drawing of a park ranger who might kind of patrol the park. A lot of people talk about the match day experience, and one of their big concerns is an increase of 15,000 fans turning up to the stadium would bring extra congestion to the area, because it does get very congested on match days. And okay, sorry. And some people have proposed, you can't really see it on here, but this is a freight train line that runs around the edge, and people have wondered whether on match days you could open up a train station near the Clarence pub and put a train there that would shuttle people in from Sandhills and so on. And as part of that, people have also been, there is a current shuttle service that brings fans in from Sandhills, and so people are saying maybe you could bring in more of that rather than accommodate more cars. Other people have been saying it'd be really great to have some children and older kids provision in the area, and particularly around the new site, so that it was somewhere that they kind of felt belonged to them and didn't become part of an antisocial behaviour problem. There is some kind of play provision down this end of the park, but there's very little up at this end, and lots of people who live over here have commented that they would like to have some play provision in the park over there, and that's, you know, that's something that we've been taking on board. The park on 4 nights a week in this area here has a great amount of football going on with the Anfield Summer League, and on a Saturday they are up to 1,200 people who are using the park. And one of the things that everybody said there is they'd like to see some better facilities, like changing rooms, toilets, access to fresh water and so on, and more bins and things like that, because all these people turn up, and we were there on Saturday in fact, and actually there was a pregnant woman who was there who wanted to talk to us but had to leave the park because she really needed a pee. And that's a good example of kind of, you know, a lot of people have given us those kind of comments. Some other interesting ideas that people have come up with is an ice rink, because Liverpool doesn't have an ice rink, and you have to go all the way over to North Wales to the Deeside ice rink if you want to go ice skating. And the temporary ice skating rink in Liverpool 1 every year, every Christmas, is absolutely chock full. So it'd be interesting to see whether something like that could take off. Another kind of out there idea was urban camping, to put that somewhere in the park, and that came on the first day at the launch. And so there'd been kind of positive suggestions that have been there that people have brought up, and there have been one or two people who are opposed to the project. So some people they're desperate to keep the houses there and so on, and we've taken that on board, but whether that would happen or not, because you can see without taking those houses, many of these bits of activity are not kind of feasible. And so that's going to be part of that response of why we wouldn't keep the houses. And that really kind of gives you a sense of all these things, how they're tied together, and what all these things. So just the kind of final thing for this is that the park, this bit of the park here, was transferred to Liverpool Football Club on a 99-year lease as when the stadium was originally moving into the park. But now it's staying there. That lease will be returned and will be united with the full freehold for the park, and that will be put into something called a community land trust, which will be owned and run by the community, and they'll be able to use any benefits then that the park generates for use in the community. And that's a kind of good sum of what the Anfield project is.
And to get in touch?
Yeah, and to get in touch with us, you can visit our website, www.anfieldproject.co.uk. You could call us on 0151 675 5033, or you can find us out and about in the community.